Mike, are we ready? Okay. I'll now call the May 5th, 2022 meeting of the Oak Ridge Town Council to order. Welcome to everyone who's here in chambers tonight and via our YouTube live stream. We're glad you're here. As you'll see, we're missing our Mayor Pro Tem, Jim Kinnaman. He is away on a very special and well-deserved vacation. And if you're watching from Istanbul tonight, Jim, just know that we can't wait to see the pictures. I'd now like to invite Summerfield Mayor Tim Sessoms forward to give the invocation. We're so thankful for our neighbors in Summerfield and for Mayor Sessoms' leadership and for his support of our town. Mayor Sessoms, could you also lead us in the pledge afterwards?
Certainly.
And please rise as you are able.
Certainly, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, Mayor, council, staff, citizens. And just before I pray, I'd just like to quickly say how much I appreciate all of you in the town of Oak Ridge and what great neighbors you are. I know so many of you I've known for such a long time, and I appreciate you all. Since coming back to the mayor's office, Ann and I have, Mayor Snyder and I have, we get together a couple of times a month for coffee and talk about the different issues of our town, and she's been a great confidant and got a lot of wisdom from her, and I'm very appreciative of that as well. So let us pray. Father, thank you for this time and this evening and this opportunity to come together to do the business of the town of Oak Ridge. Lord, we're so thankful for your many blessings to us, the beautiful land and the parks, and Father, even this beautiful facility that we're in here this evening. Lord, we just pray that as this council sits down to do this business, that they would always remember to put you first, follow your leadership and your guidance in all the ways and the avenues that they may pursue. And Father, just continue to bless the town of Oak Ridge. Just bless them, keep your hand upon them, lead them in the path of righteousness and into the future for a very good well-being and outcome for all the citizens here. For it's in your precious and holy name we do pray. Amen. Amen. If everyone put your hand over your heart or salute, and let's say the pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sessoms, and thank you for your friendship. We now move to item 3 of our agenda, which is the approval of our agenda. Is there a motion on this matter?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes and the agenda is approved. We now move to item 4, approval of the minutes from our April 7th regular meeting. Council, you've had the opportunity to review the draft. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the April 7th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll go to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries and the minutes are approved. We will now move to item 5, resolutions, proclamations, and announcements. We have 2 tonight. The first is a presentation from the Columbiettes of the Holy Cross Catholic Church in Kernersville regarding International Firefighter Day. I'll invite Patty Dumachowski and Maggie Milker forward for the presentation. Thank you for being here tonight.
For those, I was here in January. For those who didn't see me in January, we're a group from the Catholic Church in Kernersville. It's about 70 members. We do a Secret Santa in December, and we decided this year not to do that, to sort of acknowledge and say thank you to certain groups of people who serve the community. We came in January and gave some snacks to the sheriff and the police department, and yesterday was International Firefighters Day, so we decided also to collect for the firefighters. I delivered yesterday to Kernersville because the group is in Kernersville, the church is in Kernersville, but there's many of us who live in Oak Ridge, so we appreciate that too.
Okay, just to continue with what Maggie pointed out, International Firefighters Day is celebrated on May 4th every year, and it's to bring the country's attention and help recognize and honor the sacrifices of firefighters. The celebration aims to ensure that our community and surrounding environments are as safe as possible, and it's due to the sincere work of the firefighters. It's a day to commemorate and thank the current and past firefighters for their contributions. Chief Ken Gibson, who could not be here tonight, along with his fellow firefighters, do an amazing job here in Oak Ridge. Last year, they answered 813 calls. They put in over 9,303 hours of training. Their current number of members is 18 full-time and 12 volunteers. They were incorporated in 1954. In recognition, Maggie, who is the current president of Holy Cross Catholic Church in Kernersville, and I would like to present 2 baskets of snacks to the Oak Ridge firefighters. This has also been done, as Maggie indicated, with 3 other fire stations in Kernersville. I'd like to thank all the firefighters, both past and present here tonight, and give them a round of applause. I don't know if we have any other, I know Sam is
Do
involved.
we want them to come forward?
I'd love
Yeah, sure.
to
I think we
them
have
come
2 in
if anybody-
attendance. Why
Yeah.
don't you both come on up and be appreciated?
Kind of got both ends of the spectrum.
I see that. So how about a round of applause?
Oh, that's okay.
Photo op.
Sorry, I've been down so long.
I know, this is bad, right? This is bad. Thanks, Chris. And I would just like to end with the following quote: "Firefighter appreciation isn't just a once-a-year affair, because firefighters are there for us each and every day." Thank you and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you both, and thank you to our Oak Ridge Fire Department.
You think they'll share the candy?
They wouldn't share any with me, George.
Oh, why not?
I'd now like to, we'd like to do a second proclamation, and in preparation for that, I'd like to invite members who are here from the Historic Preservation Commission and from the Conservation Easement Committee to come forward in recognition for a proclamation in honor of Historic Preservation Month, which will be read by Councilwoman Pittman.
Here's the proclamation. Whereas, in 1973, the National Trust for Historic Preservation established a week in May as National Historic Preservation Week in 1973, and in 2005 expanded their celebration to a month-long observance. The Oak Ridge community has a rich and abundant history and was first inhabited by Native Americans. The earliest European settlers settled in Oak Ridge in the mid-1700s. Town leaders acknowledged the area's history with icons on the town seal, including the Old Mill of Guilford and Oak Ridge Military Academy. A historic district was established in 1994, and a historic preservation commission appointed, whose mission is to promote the restoration and preservation of historical structures within the town and to ensure compatibility with new structures are built. The town of Oak Ridge recognizes that in order to move forward, it is imperative that we acknowledge, honor, and preserve our past. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim May 2022 is Historic Preservation Month in the town of Oak Ridge, North Carolina, and I urge all citizens to celebrate efforts to preserve the town's history.
Thank you for your service on our various commissions, and I see that Courtney Harton just came in. We honor your
to put some type of camera, doesn't have to be fancy. A game camera that you can get most anywhere will often give us enough information to at least start an investigation for follow-up. And that is really about it. I have the numbers for the calls for service if you would like that. Otherwise, you know, as I said a moment ago, there's 128 total calls for service, 10 reports. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate you. We'll now invite the Oak Ridge Fire Department forward for their monthly report. Thank you for being here tonight.
Alright, monthly, the Oak Ridge Fire Department ran a total of 77 calls. 34 of those were medical related, 3 of those were MVCs, and the rest of them were service call or fire call related. Had a total training hours was 556. And the safety message this month is, since it's getting warmer, people are getting out and grilling. Make sure you at least have your grill or whatever that you're cooking at least about 20 to 25 feet from the house. That's a big cause of most of our fires around this area. So that's
Good
about it.
advice. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Enjoy the snacks. We will now move on to item number 7, the town manager's report, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. 3 items for you this evening. The first is a request to consider reappointment of Kyle Anders to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board.
Thank you. Council, in accordance with our policy regarding standing boards and committees, and based on a consensus vote of council, consideration of this appointment has been placed on our agenda. Is there a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we appoint Kyle Anders to Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion carries, and Mr. Anders is reappointed to another term. Thank you. We're grateful to him.
Secondly, I'd like to update council on a project that you're aware of, that we've requested a proposal from the Piedmont Triad Regional Council to update the compensation and classification study that they produced for us in 2017. We've added positions and reorganized some job duties since that time, and just want to ensure that our classifications and compensation is in line in keeping us competitive with other jurisdictions. PTRC proposes to complete the study for a total of $2,200. It is a budgeted item, but due to potential impacts, budget impacts moving forward, I just wanted to make sure the council was aware that we're conducting the study and to make sure that to address any comments or concerns.
Would you like a motion on this matter as well?
If council would like to make a motion on the study, that would be appropriate.
Okay, to move forward with the study. Council, what is your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve the $2,200 to move forward with the salary and position study.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion, council? Hearing none, we'll move forward with a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries, and we get to proceed with the study. I think it'll be helpful to us.
All right, thank you. A new town website will be unveiled in the coming months, and expanded public outreach and social media presence is going to be a big initiative for town staff moving forward. On the revenue side, we do anticipate a 20% increase in property tax revenue, primarily due to the first property revaluation in 5 years. We also anticipate a 20% increase in sales tax revenue, and that's due to projected increased retail sales as well as higher retail prices. This revenue increase is offset by rising costs for labor and materials for capital projects, as well as cost for services and day-to-day operations. All expenses and revenues have been researched and vetted by the Finance Committee, and all income, as per usual, has been conservatively estimated after looking at our past revenue streams. The 22-23 recommended budget proposes no change to the property tax rate of 8 cents, which was adopted in 2017. The Finance Committee reviewed and considered a revenue-neutral property tax rate, which we've adjusted and confirmed at 6.7 cents, but concluded that the revenue-neutral rate would be inadequate to fund the ambitious planned capital improvements, provide essential services in an environment of increasing costs, and also maintain adequate reserves for future uncertainties. This year's budget therefore maintains the current tax rate funds these capital initiatives, and maintains adequate reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Council, as you know, we are not voting on the budget tonight. At tonight's meeting, we're simply receiving it through this presentation, and we'll vote on it after a public hearing at next month's meeting. And I just want to remind everyone here and everyone listening that this 30-day period is a time for you to present your comments and questions to staff and to this council. But in the meantime, I want to see if there are any questions among council members tonight. I'll start with you, Councilman Sullivan.
I have no questions at this time.
Councilwoman Pittman.
No, I don't have any questions.
Councilman McClellan.
We did look at revenue neutral, didn't we?
Yes, the revenue neutral rate was presented to the Finance Committee and discussed at their last meeting.
And the reasoning behind not trying to get close to revenue neutral was?
You might want to speak up into your mic a little more.
And the reason why we chose maybe not quite revenue neutral, but calling back a little bit was?
Well, I'd be happy to answer that. Mr. Jenkins, our finance chair, is here too if he'd like to expand upon that. But
yeah, I'd kind of like to hear about that.
Well, you just covered that in the message.
Right. Really three primary reasons. One is our capital improvement plan.
Right.
The second is just being in an environment of rising costs for services and for goods. And the third is that the town has traditionally always maintained a healthy fund balance, and that's in anticipation of future uncertainties, the types of services that we may have to provide in the future.
Right.
The combination of those three factors led to that recommendation.
So inflation has really been kind of the real challenge here, it sounds like.
Well, certainly everything costs more at Town Hall.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the Finance Committee for their work, and Councilwoman Pittman was the council liaison, and I also attended the meetings. It was a great process. It's a great committee. There's a lot going on in Oak Ridge, and it is interesting that so many major projects, in fact, one of the largest projects we've ever done, is coming to fruition over the next fiscal year. But again, all of these items have been carefully vetted, and we're grateful for everyone and the committee chairs who participated.
I mean, one thing I got to be honest.
Are you speaking to the microphone?
Well, one thing is I am glad to see that the Redmond House is in here. And, you know, I think that that's going to do a lot for it, you know, to find out exactly what the cost is going to end up being once we do the, you know, send it out for bids. And of course, also, it kind of fits into my own personal philosophy that, you know, historic preservation as well as conservation is the cornerstone of conservatism.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Pittman.
I just wanted to say that it was a real pleasure to work with finance this year. I think we had a very strong group, and I appreciate all their work. I think it's financially sound budget. It supports our long-term projects and our strategic initiatives. And the projects that we're working on have been deemed priorities, not only by council, but they have been vetted at every decision point, both with public comment, and they're not new. It isn't like we get all these funds and all of a sudden we come up with new projects. Everything we're doing has been in the works for quite a while.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that for now, because as Ann noted, this is the beginning of our public comment period, and I always want to hear from you. Questions, comments, please reach out. I'm always available. If you want to discuss any part of the budget, or you have any questions, the tax rate, or just give your perspective, I'm happy to listen. And you can call me or email me. The information's on the website, or you can just flag me down at the park one day, and I'll stop and talk.
I think what Ann just shared applies equally to all council members.
Yeah.
We would welcome your comments, any discussion on any part of this budget or any aspect of it. It's a big budget. And I commend our finance committee and our staff for their hard work in doing this. There's so many variables that they've had to deal with this year that are unprecedented. I look at the operating side of the budget holding at about a 15% increase, even with adding staff and other issues when inflation has already eaten up most of that. So that is going to be one variable that's going to be very difficult for us to try to predict over the next year. But I think we have a very sound budget here, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Please share them with us.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate that we have a great balance here with cautious, conservative budgeting of revenue and pretty frugal operating expenditures. We keep a pretty tight rein on that. We also have a strong focus on saving funds for the future and then using funds when we've got the kind of support that Councilwoman Pittman was talking about and the kind of planning that we've invested in them. We invest taxpayer money in long-term projects to benefit our community. I think this budget reflects that great balance. And I went online today. Now, I don't think people's new tax rates are available yet, but we have the 17th lowest municipal rate among 532 towns and cities in North Carolina. We do a lot with the funds that we have, and I'm very proud of that. And I look forward to comments. Let's see. Now, is there any further comment from council?
No.
If not, we'll hold off until the public hearing next month, and we'll move on to our next item, which is consideration of our commercial village core design guidebook. And back to you, Mr. Bruce. And Sean Taylor, our planning director, is on vacation right now, and we're happy that he's been able to get away, so Bill gets some of his work tonight.
And of course, I'll acknowledge Sean's work on this project in working with our consultant from Hill Studio. This presentation was given to the Planning and Zoning Board last week, and I will say that at both the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning and Zoning Board, the hard work through all the public input and the hard work of staff and our consultant, I think you can see in the final report. It was received very positively, and I think it'll be a great tool to assist the town in helping to define what we mean when we say we'd like a village feel in our commercial core. I'll start with referencing the strategic plan. In 2018, Council adopted a strategic plan that specifically addressed the need to prioritize the creation of a village feel in the town's commercial core. And the Council talked a lot about what that village feel was, and I think what we all realized was that a picture is worth 1,000 words when it comes to how do you define a look and feel that you'd like to see in your town core. So that's what spurred the development of this project to create a guidebook that we could share with not only property owners but with potential developers who might be looking at doing a project in Oak Ridge. And when you can share a guidebook with them that shows the vision that council and the citizens have had input in, that's much more valuable than trying to explain what it is through a strategic plan. There's a lot of overlap between the town core and the historic district, so I'd like to suggest that this design standard really is almost like a companion to the historic district guidelines. Historic district guidelines are much stricter, and they carry considerable more weight, I think, especially within the district. But as you can see, the yellow outline is our commercial core, and there's a significant amount of property that's outside of our historic district. And those are the areas that we really wanted to focus on with this design guidebook, given that the areas within the orange, or the orangish red, are already governed by the historic district standards. It was important to the town to preserve the rural town context, so our staff and consultants looked a lot at existing structures, the existing development pattern in Oak Ridge, historically how it was developed. So spent a lot of time kind of doing that background, and the end result is an attempt to emulate some of the historic patterns that were present in Oak Ridge over the last 100 years. The guidebook is broken up into 4 sections, and I'll just walk through each one of those in the presentation. Site planning principles are very important in terms of laying out a site, and these ideas are really most relevant for the larger undeveloped tracts in the town core. The idea here is to identify what's valuable to the town about these sites, prioritize those areas, and develop around them. So when we have historic site features or natural features that are special, those are incorporated into the development plan or in some way otherwise preserved so that they can be enjoyed for future generations. Building placement was something that we looked carefully at. You want your placement of buildings to enhance the site, create a sense of place. You can see that with these renderings, the idea is that buildings are emphasized and things like parking lots are de-emphasized. So when you're in a place, the placement of the buildings and the placement of those open spaces and bringing those buildings closer to the street creates a more inviting atmosphere for pedestrians, for people to linger and meet their neighbors, and it makes it more of a pleasant place to live and to shop. Open space is important in all of Oak Ridge's strategic vision, and it's important for development of the town core as well. Incorporating those public open spaces into the developments are prioritized, and also using those open spaces for public uses, and those could include some of the examples that you see on the screen there. Maybe a farmer's market or a dining patio. And I want to emphasize that these are all, this document is really about presenting ideas. These are not schematics or plans that we would expect a developer to follow strictly. They're presenting a vision and an idea of what the town foresees as a favorable type of development. And so these are designed to sort of spur that creativity when putting together a site development plan. Pedestrian connectivity, these are things that are already very strong in our land use plan and other planning documents. One of the priorities of the village feel is a place where pedestrians feel comfortable. So sidewalks should be prevalent. Safe connections between buildings and between sites. De-emphasizing roadways. Using pedestrian paths to connect to cross roadways safely, and hiding and minimizing off-street parking. We also took a look at providing on-street parking as well as a possibility in some of the newer developments. Here again is an example of de-emphasizing your parking area or providing some parking along the street to create that more sort of inviting pedestrian environment, so you're not crossing a large parking lot to get to your destination. Landscaping was also a very important element of the document. We are going to encourage all development plans to utilize a professional landscape architect, maintain mature trees. These are also very consistent standards with our historic district. And in fact, many of these standards take inspiration from our historic design guidelines. Signage and lighting also is consistent with our historic design guidelines, keeping signage to a minimum, unobtrusive, and also lighting at the pedestrian scale and reinforcing our dark sky ordinances. You'll see a lot of this language also in the historic district guidelines, and this is designed to create a sense of a field that is comfortable for the pedestrian, and also to ensure that new structures are complementary to existing structures in Oak Ridge. That's one of the reasons why years ago we adopted a building size maximum for our commercial district. This is a way to ensure that no one building or development overwhelms the smaller town village feel that's already in place in parts of the town core. Again, these should be recognizable types of standards, using traditional and natural building materials, and using detail and ornamentation to provide interest to new structures. Part of the development or of the design standards is providing a vision for two of the larger undeveloped example sites in the town core. And the first is what we call the Linville Road site, which is the southwest corner of 68 and Linville Road. And the other is the site on the southeast corner of 68 and Fogelman Road. And we'll just share a few schematic designs for those two sites. And again, I want to emphasize that this is not something that we would expect a developer to submit as shown necessarily. These are, again, designed to provide guidance and inspiration. So you see elements that are preserved there, lots of open space there up against the road. The new structures are clustered up against the new roadways, lots of landscaping. You see some public space there facing the pond. There might be, I think what the artist rendering shows is like an amphitheater, but it could be any sort of public use area that kind of draws folks that are either doing business at the site or live there, a place that they would feel glad to visit and to meet up with neighbors and so forth. Similar idea for the Fogelman Road site. Again, just ideas, recognizing that providing on-site septic is a challenge for both of these sites. That's something that would be communicated to potential developers, of course, early on in the process, that in order to achieve some of this vision, you'd have to be creative about how you're providing your wastewater. And again, just emphasizing that these are vision plans. This is not, these are not strict sort of zoning requirements. So that sort of leads to a final comment about how we would be using this document if adopted by council. As it stands, if it was adopted today, it would have its most value as a document that would influence the rezoning process. So it would be an opportunity for the town to negotiate with the developer on the type and style of development proposed for one of these larger undeveloped sites, to say you'd be likely to receive a favorable recommendation if you're taking inspiration from this adopted document. These are the types of things that are important to Oak Ridge, and we'd like to see these elements incorporated into your plan. But that being said, staff will be working on a potential zoning overlay to incorporate some of these recommendations into a potential overlay zone, which then would give it more teeth in terms of ordinance requirements that then would be required for certain development proposals. Happy to answer any questions. That's a lot of information, I know, but this is a project that's had a lot of public input. I hope none of it is sort of out of the blue for folks, because we've tried to share progress as we've gone along and offered opportunity for input throughout the process.
Council, do you have comments or questions?
Just one follow-up. You and I had talked the other day, and I'd asked a question about, the pipeline in this project.
Right. Well, that's kind of why I emphasized that these are sort of vision plans. There are places where parking is placed over the pipeline. That's something a developer would need to negotiate with the pipeline.
Right.
In a rural context like this, that might be more difficult to do. But again, these are just vision concept ideas that designed to get ideas moving forward.
Right.
Councilwoman Pittman?
Having had my hands pretty deep in it, I just want to say that this guidebook, is the result of a truly collaborative effort. We've had so many residents, staff, and council that have contributed to it that I do think it accurately reflects the vision of our town collectively. For future development, for commercial development. And the hope is that it's a tool so that as we face the inevitable growth that a economically vibrant town like Oak Ridge is, that it's used so that we can blend our historic past, our open space, and what we need for the future. So I think it's a good document.
Thank you. Councilman Sullivan.
I'll try not to repeat. I agree with Martha. This is a wonderful tool for the town. It's a great companion document to our historic preservation guidelines and our land use plan. I think the thing that impressed me the most about this is that it's illustrated. It's an old saw to say that a picture's worth 1,000 words. But if you're looking at a written description of a visionary development plan, sometimes it's open to interpretation, and sometimes it's difficult to really get a feel for what the town would like to see incorporated into a development. I love the fact that we have included illustrations with this, which I think helps the envisioning process.
Thank you. Yeah, this is it's on the one hand very similar, as everyone's pointed out, to the design standards for the historic district, but just like those standards, it's harder than one might think to articulate what we want as a town without overly circumscribing what developers might do. So we put a great deal of thought into it, and we're grateful to everybody who participated and shared their thoughts of the kinds of things they want. And I think one of the things that, beyond working parts of this into the ordinance, whether that takes the form of an overlay zone or whatever, I'm excited about that next step because that kind of codifies it. But I also think this grew out of a strategic planning initiative that we developed back in 2018. And seeing it come to fruition is very exciting. But I think there are next steps that are possibly an economic study about what kinds of businesses we want to attract. And again, if we move forward on something like that and an economic development plan possibly, we would be getting lots of input from stakeholders, businesses, residents in Oak Ridge. So I'm excited about this. If there are no further comments, I'd entertain a motion on this matter.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the historic, where's the title? Commercial Village Core Design Guidebook.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Did you have a comment, Mr. Bruce?
I was simply going to acknowledge that we did advertise that even though this isn't a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry,
we did
you're
it sort of
right.
as a hybrid, and typically new business
right.
isn't for public comment, but
That's my mistake.
Well, guess we should probably.
Council, I don't think there's anything wrong with us pausing before our vote to invite. Would anyone from the public like to make a comment? As Mr. Bruce said, it isn't technically a public hearing, but we wanted to continue the trajectory of inviting input. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead with the vote. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries and the guidebook is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for reminding me of that. We'll now turn to our town clerk, Ms. Sandra Smith, for a presentation of the new illustrated standards for the historic district.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of people have already stolen my great line, and that is that picture's worth 1,000 words.
Sorry.
The historic district guidelines, we have had them in place here in Oak Ridge since our historic district was developed in 1994. But it is very hard to explain to people sometimes what it is that we want. What do we want to see? When we would tell, builders or developers sometimes what we want to see is something that that fits in. It doesn't have to match exactly, but something that is compatible with what we have. And sometimes that was still very hard, and we would say, you know, just ride around through the historic district and look. And people, it was very hard for them to understand. So we have undertaken this project. I know that our town attorney for several years has encouraged us to do this because it does make it more simple for people to understand exactly what we're looking for. So with the help of the Historic Preservation Commission, and we had a great graphic artist that worked with us, Carol Key, who lives here in Oak Ridge, as well as the mayor. I've worked on it, and several other people. And we've tried to really embody what it is that we're trying to get people to understand. So this is the cover, and this will be online, and you can see a lot of places that have like the little arrows on the side. That means that it is a clickable document. So if you click on one of those arrows, it's going to take you forward and back. It also has many links in there, but this cover shows several of the sites here in the historic district. And now I'm going to get Mike to just go through. All these items in the table of contents you can see are underlined, and that means they are links. So if you click on those, they will go directly to that section within the guidelines. We've done a map of our district, and we've shown here the sites that are numbered are our contributing structures that are within the historic district. And here's just a section about the district itself, and it shows lots of pictures. We made every effort to put a picture somewhere in here of every contributing structure that is in our historic district. And we have a wide variety of architectural styles. Some of them are ornate, some of them are much more simple, some of them, you know, belong to farmers, some of them belong to, you know, other people that were perhaps, you know, involved with the academy. So we've done everything we could. We've got this section here, which sometimes it was hard for people to understand exactly when a certificate of appropriateness is needed and when you need to fill out the application and come before the board. So we've done this section. You know, if you're doing routine maintenance, no, we're trying to make it very simple. Minor works, maybe. Major works, yes. And then you can see again an underlined section. So you're going to go to the definitions there of exactly what all those things mean, a major work, a minor work. And then here we have our standards, and they have different sections for existing structures. And within the historic district, everything that we're talking about is exterior changes. Nothing is within the interior of a building. But we've got the exterior structures, and then we've got, existing structures, then existing and new structures, and then purely new construction. And then finally, a section which relocation, you know, sometimes that's appropriate. Demolition, unfortunately, sometimes we have to look at that. These are different sections. For instance, this one is on roofs. As you know from driving around in the district, we have many different types of roof styles. Again, some of them are simple, some of them are ornate. Here's our section on relocation and demolition, and this shows a historic structure here in Oak Ridge that was moved and successfully done. It belongs to someone on our historic commission. And then we have these appendices at the end. Again, they're clickable. They say everything from, you know, the statutes, different tree trimming standards, glossaries, just lots of different things. And then at the end, it also does have our inventory. Here's the section that is on various types of houses that are within architecture, different styles. These sections, they're not clickable yet, but those blue boxes or dark boxes, you will be able to click on those and they will go immediately to those links that are outside the standards. And that is it. And we've tried hard to make it simple by showing pictures, and I want to emphasize that the wording in here is exactly the same. But when you have a 90-page document that is nothing but text, it is extremely intimidating sometimes to tell people, just look at the standards, that's what we want. And they look at it and go, whoa, this is way too much. So we tried to kind of divide it up and put it into sections so it would make it easier to understand and easier to use.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions or comments?
Outstanding job. You know, as one of the original historic commissioners, when we, I know exactly what you mean by the intimidation of that, just text. This is outstanding. Good work.
Any comments?
Yes, I really like that the handbook provides the historical context in which the standards that govern the district, the kind of the why and the history. I like the way the process is defined very clearly, because I can see that that would be an issue for someone who is doing something that they've never done before. But I guess at the risk of being the third person to say it tonight, the local examples and the photos of the homes that we see every day and we drive by every day, that we're all familiar with, they give the standards a relevance to the here and now. It's something we can understand because we see it. And I think that's important, that we be able to relate to these structures and understand the contribution that they make, and I think it helps us understand the work that HPC does to protect those. So I say good job. Thank you.
Councilman Sullivan?
Yeah, this is really an impressive document to me. And for a technical document, I actually enjoyed reading this for a couple of reasons. One, it's easy to understand, it's easy to follow. But the thing I got the most enjoyment out of is that it actually tells the story of Oak Ridge through our historic properties and their owners. And if you're looking for just a good way to understand the origins of this town and how we grew, just read the section on the properties. It's terrific. Great job.
Thank you. That's a great comment. And you know, that has always been in there, but I think it hasn't gotten much attention from most readers of the document because it was just an overwhelming Word document. I want to thank our attorney for seeding this idea in my head in, I don't even want to say how long ago. I think it was 2016. And we had plans for this, but we realized gradually how big a project this was. And I just want to say that a lot of towns would have farmed this out to a consultant and paid, I don't know what this was worth, you know, $30,000 minimum, okay? But here in Oak Ridge, this was done mostly by volunteers, and even our wonderful graphic designer, who we did pay basically a nominal fee to. Carol Key did an amazing job, and I know she did it mostly as a public service, and P.S., she's a firefighter also. But I want to thank the Historic Preservation Commission. They did a lot of the editing, and especially Debbie, who did tons of work on the photos. I want to thank Sandra for just, again, tons of editorial work, thinking, conceptualizing. It's hard, it looks so simple now, but it was hard to make it look simple, if that makes sense. And I also put in, I'm sure, hundreds of hours on this because I wanted to help get this over the finish line, and I'm just really proud of this new document. So I hope it attracts new people to serve on the Historic Preservation Commission. I hope it makes the commission's job easier because they can say, hey, to look at this incredible variety of styles, just leaf through, and you'll see the craftsman buildings on these pages. You'll see the neoclassical and the Greek revival, and the mixed up ones, the more eclectic ones like the Charles Benbow structure. You'll find all of them in this document, so thank you. Council, we don't need to approve this because this was approved by our quasi-judicial independent HPC. So we can now move on to our next item if there are no further comments. Hearing none, we'll move to item number 9, the first of 2 periods for public comment. Speakers are asked to provide their name and address and keep their comments under 3 minutes in length. Is there anyone who wishes to speak tonight? Patty, I saw your hand first.
Patty Domchowski, 7320 Hidden View Drive. I'd like to speak tonight on the topic of the Redmond House. Seems like I'm right in the right section here tonight. First of all, though, I'd like to recognize and thank the Finance Committee, Bill Bruce, Sam Anders, and the Town Council on all their due diligence that they've done on the proposed budget and the capital improvement plan. There was so much work I know that went on behind the scenes and out in for the community. I've been a resident here in Oak Ridge for over 10 years. One of the many things that impressed me with Oak Ridge was its concern for its historical past and ensuring that it is preserved for years to come. It was good to know that our young folks could constantly be reminded of what a rich history that this town has. I've heard from folks that the Redmond House is just an old farmhouse where a tobacco sharecropper lived, and it's located on the Benbow Stafford farm. All true, but inside the house, I think, is a treasure trove of history. I've been inside the house with the Special Events Committee decorating the outside for the holidays. It has amazing twin brick chimneys, and their wood mantels are still there, just waiting to be restored. The house is listed on the Oak Ridge Historic District Inventory List, page 34, item 58A. The house is listed as having a craftsman / front gable, 1938. It's also noted that it is a contributing historical structure. If you go out on the Oak Ridge Facebook site, you can see a great picture of Chester Redmond among the field of tobacco. I was excited to hear that the town was interested in fixing up the house and making it available for a variety of functions. The beautiful old oak trees and flowering shrubs that surround it provide an oasis of shade and restful nature. This house is currently listed as one of the more than 50 historic sites here in Oak Ridge. And most of the houses that are here in the historic site are privately owned, so nobody really gets to go in them except for when we have our tours that go in them. But this is a house that will be, the public can go into and see. I've seen the proposed changes to the house and know that it will cost money to fix it up. I've worked with Town Council, Bill Bruce, the Historic Preservation Committee, as well as the Parks and Recs Advisory Board, and they take their responsibility to the public and how their dollars are spent very seriously. If there's a more cost-effective solution, they will research it and they'll use it. This house is one of the first buildings that our community and visitors see when they turn down Linville and head for the park, the town hall, the post office, and the fire department. It should be one worthy of our town's reputation for historic preservation. So they ask that the council and the public continue their support for the renovation of the Redmond House. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, I think I saw you next.
Ron Simpson, 8022 Fogelman Road, Oak Ridge. Little did I know when I prepared these notes that I would be talking on the topic that seems to be the dominant subject of the night. So, but with that Let me point out that normally I'm speaking to you about something relating to planning and zoning, but not tonight. It's something different. I really want to talk to you about, for a few minutes about the importance of historic preservation, as if you haven't already heard a great deal of information on that same topic. One of the many features that attracted us to Oak Ridge back in 2006 were the presence of historic properties. As some of you may know, I've been a volunteer at the old mill of Guilford for 15 years. Working at the mill provides a great deal of satisfaction because people come from near and far to enjoy the many products that we produce. It's very common for people, even older than I am, to tell me that they've been coming to the mill since they were small children. I have a sense that I'm contributing to preserving this unique property for Oak Ridge. It's no surprise that a community that hosts the old mill and the magnificent historic Oak Ridge Military Academy would have a historic preservation commission. I served on that body for 3 years and learned a great deal about how historic preservation enhances our community. Now I serve on the Conservation Easements Committee. After a slow start, mostly due to COVID, we're out of the blocks and have some exciting prospects for these easements. We will be facilitating creation of conservation easements for land and preservation easements for structures. If Oak Ridge has a defining characteristic, I think a good argument could be made that it is its commitment to preserving its history and rural character. I have a reproduction flintlock hanging on my mantle. It's called a Hawken. Mine was made around 2005. It is intended to look like a pioneer rifle from the early 1800s. I'd rather have that old authentic Hawken, but mostly they are found in museums. Too few were preserved. I think historic preservation is in the DNA of Oak Ridge, and we are much better off for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Ms. Anders, come forward. You'll be next.
Then there's another one over here.
Oh, okay.
My name is Phyllis Sanders, 1837.
Phyllis, do you might want to, yeah, there you go.
I'm Phyllis Sanders, 1837 Oak Ridge Road, Oak Ridge. I have been asked to read a letter by Deborah J. Watson, who is unable to be here tonight, and it is addressed, Madam Mayor and Oak Ridge Town Council. My name is Debbie Watson. I've called Oak Ridge home for 60 years, and I have made many wonderful memories here. I am writing in regards to the upcoming vote to decide whether or not the farmhouse on Linville Road will be torn down. This house is full of rich history and is a big part of some of those lovely memories that I've made. My parents were among many of the farmers that lived there. They raised tobacco and raised large gardens. We had lots of good neighbors who helped in the fields. I helped after I was married and took my kids to the fields and kept them in a wooden playpen. Such special memories we made. Farming held this community together. This is the last old farmhouse around. It would be a great disservice to this community and to those who live there. It would be a shame not to use it for community affairs like birthday parties or reunions. This house, if kept, will preserve our heritage. Thank you, Deborah J. Watson.
Thank you for reading that. Let's see, who was next? Caroline. And then you'll be next.
And then
John.
we have a person over here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not looking that way. I'm looking that way. You'll be next.
Caroline Ruck, 1976 Beeson Road, Oak Ridge. I wanted to speak to you about Redmond House tonight, but first I wanted to tell you I've been a resident of Oak Ridge for 27 years, and although I'm not a native, I feel like I've been here long enough to truthfully call it home. I love Oak Ridge, and I have invested a lot of time in the community and trying to absorb myself into this community. Right now, currently, I'm vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I've served on the commission for about 7 years. I find that the town and the commission, as far as our historic district homeowners are concerned, we ask them to follow these design standards, which you guys have seen visually on the screen tonight. And actually, it's not just the Historic District homeowners, it's the businesses located within the district as well. And these standards are very clear. They are all about preservation. And demolition is usually not at the top of that list. That is not what we want. I state all these facts to reference my opinion that Redmond House should not be demolished or neglected, but that it should be preserved through reuse. And adaptive reuse or preservation through reuse is taking a structure such as Redmond House and giving it a new purpose. And many of you might say, well, why is that important? Well, there are a number of reasons. I'll give you a few, but the first one is it maintains our cultural heritage. Old buildings or homes are a depiction of our native history. They're a tangible way of passing on our history to future generations. And I can't tell you specifically with Redmond House how many times I've referenced its craftsman bungalow style within my HPC meetings. Two, it's important because it creates a new community beacon. Adaptive reuse architecture is functional, but it's also beautiful. And people, they're drawn to these beautiful homes, whether they're grand or small vernacular buildings. Three, it restores culturally significant sites that would otherwise be left to decay or bulldozed for parking lots or whatever might be the agenda. But once they're gone, the history can never be retrieved. They're gone. But lastly, and importantly, adaptive reuse is sustainable. The greenest building is the one that already exists. It's sustainable because of the reduction in building materials needed to transform a space, and it reduces the carbon footprint. So while it may be costly, it is important also for the environment. The North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources says preservation serves to return a sense of pride and optimism to communities, large and small, rural and urban, across the state. In this case, Redmond's new use would provide our community with an indoor meeting spot for families, for birthday parties, reunions, for baby showers, club meetings, business meetings, luncheons. I mean, it goes on. There's endless uses. And while I'm happy to see that Oak Ridge tries to balance its development with preservation, such as purchasing our beautiful open farmlands and trying to preserve those open spaces, I would also like to see them invest in our historical structures. You know, we ask this of our historic district homeowners, and it's not always easy to follow those standards. It's often a burden, financially even. But lucky for us, these historic district homeowners find it worthy. They find it a joy to look at the beauty they create by doing that. So I say, as a town, let's practice what we preach. Let's model those same expectations and invest in our community the way that we ask our historic district to invest. Let's renovate, let's preserve Redmond by reuse and create a meeting spot for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Was it your hand that was up, Alexandra? Or someone over here? Okay.
I thought your hands was up.
Okay. Then John Garrett.
Hello, my name's John Garrett, and I'm a resident of 8604 Broomfield Road for 38 years. And I wanted to talk about the Redmond House as well. Considering all the revivals of buildings taking place in our state, I think it's safe to say that people have a fondness for historical places. The materials used in older constructions often include heart pine, old brick, stone, and convey a feeling of warmth that newer buildings cannot. With their awkward corners, mixture of architectural styles, and remnants from different occupants, they are just more interesting. Looking at historical homes, some people feel a sense of pride in their rich heritage, as I do. Others might feel them cozy or reassuring. Whatever the reasons may be, I believe buildings like the Redmond House should be kept. Historic property doesn't need to be associated with an important event in the town's past. It can be simply provide a glimpse of how the past residents lived. And I think the Redmond House does that. Communities like Oak Ridge need historic buildings to give them a sense of its rich heritage. Renovating them doesn't just solidify a town's past, it also can help to strengthen the future. Sometimes there can be pressure on local governments to demolish a heritage building due to inefficient use of space inside. It takes much more energy to tear down and rebuild them than to restore. Preserving is good for the environment by promoting sustainability. Renovations can repurpose and breathe new life into old structures like the Redmond House for many other uses. I think that our children should know their history, learn from it, and respect it. We all need to know our past traditions and customs, which are priceless and irreplaceable. Our history is our knowledge and power. In my opinion, we need to preserve and restore the Redmond House with repurposing in mind. By destroying it, we show disrespect for our forefathers and their traditions. Showing respect is a form of patriotism. Past, present, and future weave into the character of Oak Ridge. Walking down our streets should provide a glimpse of our rich heritage. I think it is crucial to keep the Redmond House because it serves as examples of our past. In brief, it's not just preserving the Redmond House that's important, it's the history and the heritage behind it. Once historic buildings are gone, we won't have another opportunity to bring them back. If they go away, they're gone forever. We need to keep the Redmond House. And in your package, I believe you've got a copy of my comments, but interesting in that is, like somebody said, pictures worth 1,000 words tonight. There are several pictures there of family members that probably, some of them you may recognize, some of you may not, because they're old pictures. But the first page has, at the bottom is one of the Redmond family. He's getting ready, I understand, getting ready for a horse show. It's in front of the house. It's a senior Redmond. And also the Jones family, and there's a lot of smiles on their faces. They're obviously enjoying their life there, as it appeared to be, and they've thrived in that farmhouse. The second page of pictures is a farmhouse which also is an important meeting place. There's several families there. The bottom two, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they're important people in our community. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight?
You got one right there.
Alex.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Gill, 8548 Benbow Merrill Road. I'm going to be a little brief since everybody covered a lot of really good points about the Redmond House. I did want to talk about how, while I am not originally from Oak Ridge, I did grow up in a very historic city in northern Ohio with a very rich history. And unfortunately, despite the rich history, many historic buildings over the years have been torn down or have fallen down due to neglect. Recently, they have had to tear down about 117-year-old train station, which this is in a historic train town. That's showing you that there is a little bit of a problem. And there is still an old hotel called Hotel Ashtabula, which is sitting in the downtown, completely unused. And the old Shays Theater, you can hear about all of the movies that they used to play back in the 50s, and that has been abandoned. And unfortunately, the town there doesn't have a lot of support or interest in preserving a lot of the historic buildings. And as the buildings are torn down, the people in the town immediately blame the town itself for allowing this to happen, because none of the natives from the city want to see these buildings that they remember from their childhood or have heard stories about be torn down. And Oak Ridge, being smaller, has a lot less buildings to give up. So every single historic building that is lost in Oak Ridge is just one step closer to Oak Ridge being no different than any of the other small towns in North Carolina. So when we moved here, we went everywhere from Raleigh to Greensboro to Charlotte, and a lot of different towns looking for a place to live. And we ultimately settled on Oak Ridge because of the historic buildings and, you know, the farm fields and just kind of how it had this village feel. And so on that note, with the Redmond House being a smaller agricultural house, it wasn't owned by somebody that was super prominent that lived there and threw lavish parties. It is probably more at risk for loss than any of their houses, but it also represents a lot more of what made Oak Ridge in the beginning. It was an agricultural community. They did farming. There were people living in small houses and trying to make a living. And, you know, the Redmond House is an example of what Oak Ridge has come from. And I had the opportunity of going to the College of Agriculture, and agriculture has always been very important to me. And in the US, we're losing about 2,000 acres a day of our best agricultural land for development. And as this happens, people are becoming more distant from where their food comes from, how agriculture is handled. And if we could keep at least a little part of the agricultural heritage, this gives something for our kids to look at, something that we can talk about, and an example of what we need to make sure to preserve so that we can continue to feed our country. And in addition, everybody that I have talked to thinks it is probably one of the cutest houses that they've ever seen, and I think that there would be very disappointed people to see anything bad happen to that house. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stone.
Good evening, Mike Stone, 8112 Hunting Cog Road. So everybody's talking about the Redmond House, so let's talk about the Redmond House. Nobody has ever suggested, to my knowledge, that we demolish that house. Nobody. If they did, they said it in private because they get flogged in this town, okay? So let's just go ahead and eliminate that. But the thing about it is, what we do want to think about is the house has a tax value of $35,000. It's an 1,100 square foot house. The proposed budget is $455,000 to renovate a $35,000 house. That's 13 times the value of the house. Put that in perspective, a $400,000 house in Oak Ridge, you would pay $5.2 million to renovate your house. The only people that would say that's a good idea are crazy people or people spending somebody else's money. That's the bottom line on it. It's a great house. The town of Oak Ridge could give the house to someone and pay to have it moved and spend less money than what you're proposing to spend. $400 per square foot is what you're talking about. The most opulent house in Oak Ridge, a multi-million-dollar house, doesn't cost $200 a square foot. And you're talking about spending $455,000 for an 1,100 square foot house. That is not fiscally responsible. And I would ask you to consider that when you're looking at the tax neutral rate. The amount of money extra that we're going to be paying, half of that is going into the Redmond House. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Seeing no one, we will move on to item number 10, which is our monthly financial update, and I'll invite our finance officer, Mr. Sam Anders, to present that report.
Good evening, Council. Everyone should have gotten a copy of the financials and the finance officer's report by email last night. On the financials, as is normal, we're holding a strong balance sheet position. We have $4.588 million in current assets, current liabilities of $63,000, fund balance of $4.5 million, of which a little bit under $1.7 million is committed to capital projects. And then we've got various restrictions, grants. The fund balance unassigned is $2.4 million. Included in that is all our funds, all our funds are invested at Truist and at Bank of Oak Ridge right now. For the month, we had revenues that came in of $129,000 rounded. We had expenses of $123,000, $24,000 rounded. Net revenue addition of a little bit over $5,000. Overall, strong position. We got $364,000 at Truist, $4.2 million at Bank of Oak Ridge. Of that, $828,000 is in that reserve special ARP funding account that you see as the last of the three items, $828,000. And then behind that, you've got your fine detail of income and expenses, budget to actual analysis, and your assets and the liability statement for the outstanding loan. On that, we have on the 16th of July coming up, we will be having our next installment payment, which will be the 5th, and we will be essentially halfway through that promissory note with that 5th payment. For the month, we received wire transfers totaling $2,059.25 for property taxes, motor vehicle taxes of $8,193.21, totaling $10,252.46. That represents all collections in our account as of April the 30th. For the month, we had sales tax, property tax disbursements like normal. Interest, we had some donations to the dog park, various other park revenues. The $50,000 capital grant from North Carolina was received and has been put in the accounts. ABC revenue distribution, that as has been for the history of our ABC participation, very strong. We had $39,000, making a total of $214,298 on a $200,000 estimated budget. So the ABC board again outperformed our estimates. So that was special. Special events, park and town special events also had some small amounts that come in. Investments at the banks, we are monitoring those. Right now, the funds, the ICS funds that we've got it invested in is the sweet spot for interest earnings. That is something we're aggressively watching and hoping that we can find some better rates of return. But that is being under constant monitoring. Support for the staff, we've got grant compliance. The bid process that's still ongoing with the Heritage Farm Park, keeping communication with Truist. ARPA and SCIF grants, we're doing continuing issues on that. Myself and Bill took on the unenviable task of trying to get the ARPA report in, which basically had zeros on it because we've not spent the money yet. Making a mountain out of a molehill, I think, would be the good analogy for us trying to file a very simple blank report. And we say that kind of laughing because there's, so far in the ARPA funding, there's been 2 different identification login programs that were merged together, and 2 other separate programs for filing these reports that were merged together. And I haven't even had time to tell Bill this, but late this afternoon, we got the help desk from ARPA sent us an email wanting to know if we still needed help because it looked like our reports had been filed. And by my count, it's roughly, what, a 10-day response period. I don't recommend their help center. But Bill did a great job in finally getting that report in. It was very crucial. We kind of chuckled about it, but it was so crucial that both state and county folks were contacting, is there anything we can do? Yeah, get the computer to work, but it was very crucial because this compliance stuff, while seemingly innocuous at this point, hinges on us being able to use the money. It also has effect on the county being able to use monies and the state of North Carolina being able to use money. So we're all together on one big ARPA team. So we are monitoring, we're taking classes, we're looking. Regulations on this are changing even as we speak. So we're trying to keep abreast of that. We may have a few nail biters when we come to some other due dates, but we're going to do our very best to try to keep ahead of it, given that this is a never-before-seen process, never-before-seen programs, and never-before-seen compliance rules. The other thing that we have been doing, of course, for the month is supporting the budget process and the calculations, the information that Bill gave you. We've been refining even yesterday we received additional information, fine detail from Guilford County, as well as receiving our transfers, and that generated our updating of the numbers yet again. But that's pretty much everything on the finance side. If you have any questions or anything, or if you have any questions as you go through your packets on the budget and you want to know where, if you're a numbers geek, Martha, and want to know where a specific number came from or how the calculation went, I'm available to provide that. Although if I put it in writing to you, we'll probably use it for sleeping material.
Thank you, Mr. Anders.
Not me.
Council, do you have any questions, or is there a motion to accept the finance report as presented?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the financial report as presented by the Chief Financial Officer.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries, and thank you so much for that financial report. We'll now move on to a period for committee updates from each of our boards and committees, and we have a lot, as Bill mentioned earlier. Ms. Smith will read any that are submitted in writing, which we're still accepting, and we'll start with special events.
Last time for me. Patty Dunchowski, 7320 Hidden View Drive. Short report for tonight. Our fundraising, our current total is $115,046, which includes this year's matching funds and the anticipated next year matching funds that will come about on July 1st. Our paper sale has officially started. Hopefully everybody will see our ad in the current Northwest Observer. 4x8 pavers are $100 and 8x8 pavers are $250. Just a reminder again that the money collected for the pavers will also be matched by the town. Flyers are available in the back of the room, and they can also be obtained from Ashley Royal at Town Hall during the week. Groundbreaking ceremony last month, thanks to the Northwest Observer again for a really nice picture and article. Memorial Day ceremony will be on Monday, May 30th at 10 a.m. at the Amphitheater in the park. Our speaker will be Steve Nash, Vietnam Navy SEAL, and as always, participation by our local scouts. Veteran site construction, the construction documents are 100% complete, and the new cost is $194,000. And we are kind of happy with that because this was based on the rise in building materials and cost right now. It was kind of a modest increase. We continue to work with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and the development of the new park. Light Up the Night, we've ordered the remaining luminary lights to complete the circuit in the front part of the park. Our committee continues to work on obtaining craft vendors and entertainment for the event. And as always, a shout out to my committee, the Special Events Committee, for all that they continue to do. Any questions, comments?
Thank you. And Parks and Rec Advisory Board, Mr. Browning.
Good evening, Council. My name is John Browning. I live at 8024 Linville Road in beautiful downtown Oak Ridge. I'm here to give the activities report for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We held our meeting April 21st, both in person and by Zoom. Just want to highlight just a couple quick things that we did. We did adopt a new project guideline document. This has been a work in progress for several months. We appreciate the input from the mayor and Councilwoman Pittman on this. This will be a tool for us to use when citizens submit new projects or additions to our park. It kind of establishes the process and the criteria that we can use. And just to refresh your memory, we've been the beneficiary of some really nice projects, the Flag Retirement Pit and the dock down by the pond. Most of these projects are submitted by the Scout group, but occasionally citizens will present projects to us. So we're happy to have that document in place. And just a couple other quick approvals that we did. And we approved an Eagle Scout project to have a 5K race to benefit the Veterans Honor Green. So we're most happy. We understand they got Patty's blessing on this, and that's to be in October. So we're happy to have that race in place. And Nick Jameson, the scout who presented this, says he may try to make that an annual event to raise money for that site. So we're happy to have had that. We also approved a request by Odyssey of the Mind Group. It's 5 local middle school kids that are going to Iowa to compete in a national championship there in Iowa. So they have a tent set up to sell snacks and drinks at some of the soccer and baseball, softball games at the park. So if you're interested in that, check out those and buy some stuff from them. Our pickleball trial is going well. There's a good little group of ladies and people that play. Susan Phillips and Laura Peoples were the initial group that had just kind of requested just a temporary spot in the parking lot to play. So it seems like it's been a good fit for the group and no issues caused by that group. In fact, 2 excellent articles in the Northwest Observer that came out today highlight that pickleball group and also Odyssey of the Mind. So if you have any questions about those 2 things, just flip through and read that Observer. Always good information in there. And we're most happy that our Music in the Park series has started. Second Saturday of every month, and May 14th, the Nathan Ward Band is going to be with us. So y'all come out and have a good time. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We'll move on to Finance Committee. Mr. Jenkins.
John Jenkins, 6700 Ashton Park Drive. I thought what I'd do tonight is just walk through the budget process so that people will know what the Finance Committee did. So, as you know, the budget process begins in February. And what we like to do is compare budget to actual to see how we're doing. And obviously, you don't have actuals in February and March when we start the process. So what we ask Bill and Sam to do is put together a projection for the rest of the year. In the first meeting, we reviewed last year's actual to this year's projected actual, and we asked Bill to give us explanations for any significant differences between those. So we're trying to get a budget to actual. And we go through line item by line item and do that. And we asked Bill to put some time in to project what the actuals are going to be, as opposed to a lot of places will take the budget, subtract out what they spent so far, and the projection is the rest of the budget. And we don't do that. And then the second meeting, we take that projected actual, and Bill presents the budget to the committee, and the committee reviews this year's budget to next year's budget, or this year's projected actuals to next year's budget, and again ask for line item details around significant differences between year to year. And then the third meeting, what we do is we go through the capital budget that has been put together by the council and review that and do an analysis of the impact on the overall budget, the next year's budget, and the fund balance, and what is going to happen to the fund balance. And obviously, with the large projects going on, we have to review what is happening in future years to determine what that might do to the fund balance. And that then leads us to an analysis of what we're going to do with the tax. And as we heard earlier, we are neutrally, we don't need to charge as much tax as we do, but with all the projects that are coming up, with the amount of money we like to keep in reserve for if something were to happen drastically, that we get a drop in revenue, that we might need to fund the town with out of the reserves, we keep a healthy reserve, much more than we need to. But again, that's the conservative nature of this council and of Bill. So I would like to commend Bill and Sam on the level of effort they do to put this together, because what we ask for is not easy to do at times. And then we have one of the strongest committees we've ever had. So this year it was a pleasure to go through the budget process, and we are very pleased with the outcome, and we are pleased that Bill put together such a good budget. And we believe that this town is very fiscally conservative, and I'm proud to be part of the budget process. Any questions?
I think you all did an outstanding job.
I think so too, George. Thank you.
And thank you for your many years of leadership.
Too many.
And you're right, it is a terrific committee. It's just a pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you
is.
so much.
I only have one problem.
Yeah?
Councilman Pittman never brought cookies to the
But I
meeting.
brought candy.
The duties of council members go on and on, right? We'll now move to Water Advisory Board, and in the absence of a new chair, Councilman Sullivan will report.
Yes. Water Advisory Committee met on April 21st, and the primary purpose of that meeting was to hold a second workshop with Mike Myers, the president of EnviroLink, the company that will be looking after any well systems that the town owns and operates. And we spent the bulk of our time reviewing recommendations of rates and fees which the town needs to establish to complete the water rules, which are the rules by which we will operate and maintain those systems. The first system the town will actually own is at Honeycutt Estates, and we anticipate receiving ownership of that system sometime in June. And our next meeting will be on May 25th, and the agenda items will include finalizing those rates and fees in order to make a recommendation to council for them to be adopted. We anticipate receiving the Wooten Company report on water access for fire suppression. We hope to have that report by May 18th, a week prior to our meeting. I anticipate it will take the committee a couple of months to work through those recommendations and evaluate them and consider different options before we might be in a position to make some recommendations to council. And finally, we do need to elect a new chair, which will happen at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay, then we'll move on to Historic Preservation. Ms. Engel.
Barbara Engel, 8524 Rosedale Drive. Good evening. The HPC met for its regularly scheduled meeting on April 20th. We approved the new illustrated designs. There are pictures of every contributing historic house in the historic district, examples of architectural elements, and as well as glossary terms. They look great, and we're excited to begin using them. Sean Taylor gave a presentation on the Commercial Village Core Design Guidebook. The HPC felt the town was moving in the right direction by implementing this project. It will improve the overall look and feel of the community, and we support it. We received 2 grant applications, one for the Danielle Stone House and one from ORMA for a project at Maple Glade. The Committee for the Historic Oak Ridge History Book met to review and discuss sample graphic designs. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. And Planning and Zoning, Mr. Streck.
I got to raise this up after tomorrow. Jason Streck, 8518 Rosedale Drive. The Planning and Zoning Board met last week to get a presentation and ultimately to make a decision about recommending the Commercial Village Core Design, I got to read this, Core Design Guidebook that was approved by Council tonight. And as contentious as some of these things can be for planning and zoning, ultimately we voted unanimously in favor for it. One of the things that I think we saw a little bit of anxiety on the part of some of the board members moving forward. I think as much guidance as town council can provide to planning and zoning, we like to see things in black and white, and subjectivity is sometimes difficult for this board. So having things in writing, having ordinances, having things that we can apply directly would be greatly appreciated. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Mountains to Sea Trail, do we have a report?
I have it.
Oh, go for it.
I attended this meeting, and we have a member here now, if you want to read it, or I'll read it. Okay. I received this afternoon. The Mountains to Sea Trail Committee met via Zoom on April the 26th and reports the following items. The committee continues to meet with town residents and are working to develop a proposed route for our next phase of trail development in Oak Ridge. While underway, we continue to work with the Friends of the MST organization to complete installation of a kiosk at the Linville Road Trailhead parking lot. The new kiosk will follow the latest MST guidelines and will be installed by the Friends of the MST at no charge to the town. I'll just comment that this is like their prototype, and so they're coming here and they're going to do that for us as they document their process in their new format. We have identified an optimal position for the kiosk that is visible from the parking lot and accessible to hikers entering the trail. The committee is also planning and estimating costs for a small section of split rail fence to frame the perimeter of the Linville Road parking lot. The fence will be easy to maintain and will guide hikers from the parking area onto the start of the trailhead. We will announce a work day in the near future when we are ready to install. Lastly, Mike Kimmel staffed a booth at last weekend's Canine Capers event in the park to share information and future plans of the MST route through Oak Ridge. The booth was well attended, and Mike connected to a few potential volunteers. And my report was, I believe he sold 2 t-shirts. So we're very happy. We do have Oak Ridge Trails t-shirts, respectively submitted. Ann Steele and Bill Roy, committee co-chairs.
Thank you. And finally, Conservation Easement Committee.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Farrow. I live at 5839 Billet Road in Oak Ridge, and I'm here to give the update from the April meeting of the Conservation Easement Committee. The title of my report is Regrouping and Refocusing for Success. During our meeting on April 20th, we discussed the plans for the open house or information session that we had been planning, and I believe Ron Simpson gave, our co-chair gave the update on that in last month's meeting. And after discussing the objectives of that event, the audience that we're trying to reach, and the interest that we had received to date, we determined as a group that an open house was not the right channel for the core initiative at this time. Instead, we decided to step back and take a more focused approach to moving forward. This will include members of the committee will follow up with the citizens who've expressed interest, and we have received interest from a number of citizens even before the press release and the information was ready and distributed. So we want to move these queries along to find out what questions are being asked, what information is needed, and ultimately progress one to a funded grant so that we can use that as a case study for a future open house or information session at a date to be determined later. By waiting, we'll learn more, become better educated to better help citizens with this process, and ultimately make it a better process for everyone. With the open house postponed, we are moving to the more targeted approach to outreach. We're going to draft 2 letters, one focused on prospective homeowners of historic structures, and one for landowners for open space conservation in the town of Oak Ridge, informing them of the program and how to learn more. Finally, the press release was completed as well as the program information and was ready for distribution to the public. The press release was issued on April 27th, and we received great feedback from many organizations, including the town of Summerfield, the town of Southern Pines, and a representative from the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Committee, which is an office within the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources. I will be forwarding those emails to you all tomorrow. The Piedmont Land Conservancy and Preservation North Carolina also shared the press release with their distribution list to further the reach of their news. We're very pleased and very excited with the feedback that we have received to date. Next steps for our committee include finalizing the letters and distributing it to the list that we are developing. In addition, we will continue outreach to citizens who have expressed interest in this program. As always, thanks to Mayor Schneider, Councilwoman Pittman, Bill Bruce, and Sean Taylor for your support of this committee, and a big thanks to the Town Council and the Town of Oak Ridge for supporting this initiative. Are there any questions or feedback?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll now move to reports from community organizations. Do we have a report from the Oak Ridge Military Academy tonight? How about the elementary school? Oh, nothing from them. Oak Ridge Youth Association. I know that Randy Collins is out of town. I guess the replacement guy didn't show up. Okay, then we'll move to a second and final period of public comments, item number 13 on your agenda. Again, we ask speakers to be brief. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Please.
This is going to take but a second. On a more somber note, you've seen us here several times with the fire service with the Strength and Honor Scholarship Fund. Excuse me, this is a little tough to have to explain, but Andrew Rosoli died soon to be 17 years ago. I've learned this last week the family is having Andrew disinterred in Greensboro. He will be reinterred at Arlington National Cemetery on May the 16th at 9 a.m. Family wanted to notify the fire service through myself first. We're in the middle of doing the scholarship again right now. And they are going to, the parents and all the family have agreed, and Andrew is going to be buried at Arlington on that morning. So it's coming up on 17 years. And, you know, it's the very brief, and this is a very brief thing that they have on the fall in Military Times. Marine Lance Corporal Andrew D. Rosoli, 21 of Greensboro, North Carolina, assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. He was killed October 20th by an improvised explosive device while conducting combat operations against enemy forces near Nasar wa Salam, Iraq. And there was also a staff sergeant and a lance corporal with him when he died. Andrew gave the ultimate sacrifice, and this small paragraph doesn't fully fulfill the impact that young man had. Had he lived, he would have been here tonight, I'm sure, with Hampton and our other guys either at the station or here. His intention was to come back and become a firefighter so he could save lives instead of taking lives. We're going to have a representative on site at Arlington on the 16th to render honors when they reinter him. I'm sure the family would appreciate all thoughts and prayers as they go through this difficult process. This young man and the family have contributed. The fine number, once this year comes through, is going to be approximately $50,000 in educational donations to help young people right here in our community. So that is a wonderful, lasting memory for the Rosoli family and a wonderful honor in the name of Andrew. But please think about the family. This is not going to be an easy time, I'm sure, because it's been 17 years since they gave their son up. And in essence, this is going to be giving him up a second time, although he will lie among all of our honored dead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Mr. Stone.
Mike Stone, 8112 Hunting Cog Road. I hope the council will give me just a couple of extra minutes to speak tonight. I was not aware of Andrew's family's decision. Andrew was a friend of the family. He and Matt Finner hung out at our house. My daughter dated both of them at one point in time. Terrific guy. For those that don't know, Matthew Finner was in the same division, and Matt and Andrew were best buds in high school. Matthew was in the vehicle directly behind Andrew's. So he saw what none of us would ever want to see. What an honor for Andrew to be interred at Arlington. Sadly, he earned every bit of that. So, the reason I stepped up tonight, the budget proposal, Finance Committee, as always, does fantastic work. Mentioned in the manager's report, increased costs, future uncertainties, inflation is at a 40-year high, increased sales tax due to cost of goods. In addition to that, the feds raised the interest rate. Guilford County raised their tax rates through the revaluation. And there are 2 bond referendums on the ballots to be voted on. These are burdens to the citizens of Oak Ridge, to the citizens of Guilford County, to all of us. You can't control any of that. The one thing that you can control is the Oak Ridge tax burden. The proposed budget has a 20% tax increase on the citizens of Oak Ridge. You know me, every year, like clockwork, I'm here asking the town council, whether I was sitting there or standing here, asking the town council, please reduce our taxes. Well, I'm going to surprise you. I am not going to ask you to reduce our taxes this year. I'm simply going to ask you for no tax increase. I noticed in the Northwest Observer, everybody can see that, it's a good-looking fellow that's in the paper there, got an ad going on. Good luck on your campaign, George. We're rooting for you. Very first bullet point, will not support property tax increases. You got a tough row to hoe. Because you've got to convince 2 more people on the town council to shave about $175,000 to $200,000 out of the budget for a revenue neutral proposal. Good luck to you. I'm counting on you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing no one, we'll move on to council comments, and I'll start with Councilman Sullivan.
Thank you. Everyone seems to want to speak about the Redmond House tonight, so I will too. As you know, I was just appointed to council a month ago, so that was the point at which I began to look in detail at the Redmond House and the potential renovation, reconstruction, however you want to frame that. The first thing that struck me tonight was the number of comments that were made about tearing the building down. Council, by previous action, has already committed itself to some form of reconstruction or renovation by including it in the capital improvement process. So I don't know where that idea is coming from. Now, like Mr. Stone, when I began to look at this, I was startled by the projected project cost. So I began to look into the details of what has been given preliminary design and subcommittee work on. The first thing, when I looked at the preliminary design, I had a lot of questions that I wanted to ask the architect about the design of the building, about the nature of the reconstruction. I made a list. They have that list. I'm waiting for the replies. There is a subcommittee that's working on this. And there have been a lot of opinions expressed. A lot of folks have written letters to council members. We do appreciate that, by the way, because we like to know what you're thinking. And there have been a lot of different opinions about potential use for that building. Now, I'm a big proponent of form follows function, or begin with the end in mind. You have to know what you're going to use the building for so that you can incorporate design features that will facilitate those uses. Perhaps we might end up with a one-size-fits-all design. I don't know, but usually you try to fit the form to the functions that you intend to use it. I have asked that subcommittee to consider that. I think we've not yet identified the cost of the site improvements. That, again, is a part of the ongoing process of this. I think the point I want to emphasize here is council is working to come up with a way to reconstruct that building. And I think Historic Preservation Committee will agree with me. It is the exterior of the building that matters, not the interior. There are a lot of different ways that the exterior of that house can be preserved. But the question that needs to be answered ultimately to me, when we finally get all the pieces of the puzzle put together, is in the end, will the expense, the final expense, when we have a firm number, represent a good value to the citizens of Oak Ridge? And I hope we keep that focus as we continue to move through this process. I promise you, I will do my due diligence on this, as I will on all of the other construction projects that we have in the pipeline, so to speak, in the CIP, as we move forward. Thank you all for your comments tonight. I appreciate your interest. We couldn't do a tenth of the work we do without all of our committees. They are so important to us. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pittman.
As I was preparing today and then listening, I didn't realize just how much we were going to focus on historical preservation tonight. But even as preparing, I realized that as we declare May Historic Preservation Month in Oak Ridge, that we also had 3 major agenda items tonight that support and advance the preservation of our unique rural character. our budget, our Commercial Village Core Design Guidebook, our Oak Ridge Historic District Design Standards Handbook, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the new core initiative that we recently released and is being implemented by our Conservation Easement Committee. Although it's not yet approved, and we don't have final cost, and we don't even have final designs on the Redmond House, our proposed budget does support preservation. 1, seed funding for the core initiative. 2, some type of renovation of the historic Redmond House. 3, historic preservation grants. And 4, construction of the Heritage Farm Park with a plan that protects much of that historic farmland as open space along our beautiful Highway 150 viewshed. Both the Commercial Core Guideline and the new Historic District Design Standards offer straightforward guidance that will protect all that is precious to us while providing guidance as we grow so that the old and the new complement each other. Not replace anything, but complement each other. With all of these projects and initiatives, we're putting our pledges to protect, preserve, and plan into action. So the statement that came to me was, in reality, Oak Ridge celebrates historic preservation every month, every day, every week, every month. And I think we showed that tonight. And I think we have all committed to continuing that work for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McClellan.
Wow, I don't think I can follow up on that. That was great.
Thank you.
It was. Folks, I'm so happy that y'all came tonight, and I want to thank all of you for the letters that I have received concerning the Redmond project. What makes I know some folks may be a little bit shocked at that price that's in the budget, but keep in mind, that's only to permit us to, once that budget is adopted, will permit us to submit the project for bid to find out what the actual price will be. Because we do think that that's a high price, higher than what it will actually be. So it is part of our due diligence. So I also want to thank our Finance Committee. Outstanding job as usual. In fact, John, you can't quit. Perpetual servitude, I think is the term, isn't it? Indentured. Yes, thank you. And of course, I want to thank our other committees. You guys are doing a great job. And yes, you are the core and the strength of this town. And, so thank you all so much. And also got a little date coming up here in a few days, already going on, called May 17th. Hope you all will take the time to vote. And look forward to seeing you out there at the polls. Once again, God bless y'all, and thanks for allowing me to be of service.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's unusual to get so much public comment, but I think because the Redmond House project has moved very slowly, it's good to have it out there and discussing it, and I'm looking forward to hopefully a presentation from staff and the members of the subcommittee, which is mostly staff, on this project. I want to also say that anyone, and Mr. Stone, I would welcome to sit down with you, because the proposed design is 1,500 square feet, and it proposes renovating the historic portion of the building, which the structure is in great shape, revealing, taking off the modern siding, and then adding, taking off the current addition, which, I don't know, dates from the 60s or something, and adding a functional addition with a simple prep kitchen, ADA accessible bathrooms, add in the HVAC. So all of this has to be to commercial code. Yeah. So it's really two projects, and the use in terms of form follows function, which is an important component of this. The entire design was developed based on the proposed use. that was vetted by our Parks and Rec director and other members of our staff and planning director and representatives from planning, Parks and Rec, and historic preservation. So the use, I know that people talk about a lot of different uses, but most of those uses can be accommodated and are, because the open design is going to be so simple and so functional as planned, that, you know, everything from, you know, simple museum exhibits for a weekend to, you know, parties and meetings and everything can be accommodated. So most of what people talk about is actually can be accommodated in this building. I know you were involved in the AI church, and I don't think it was worth much before you renovated it. So the point is to also take this estimate, which is called an armchair or desktop estimate. It isn't from a motivated contract. And Patty illustrated, we thought when the Veterans Site project, when we were going to get an updated cost estimate, we all expected it to double because everything in our new park has doubled. But because it wasn't an armchair estimate, it was from a motivated contractor who wants, landscape architect, I guess, who wants the job. He demonstrated that by providing a much lower estimate than we expected. I think we will have the same thing happen with the Redmond House because there are we have an area rich in builders. And I think we're going to get a very motivated estimate for it. But the thing to remember is it isn't just restoring the house. And many people focused on this. It's putting it to new use. I thought Caroline did a great job of talking about that. That's the only way to preserve it. And the longer we leave it, it's gutted on the inside, the longer we leave it in its current condition, that neglect will lead to its demolition by neglect is the term in the preservation community. Now, I'm not for preservation at any cost. I'm not for preservation for its own sake. I'm for the balance that preservation provides. You balance new uses for historic properties like the Redmond House and the park property with the desirable outcome of preserving their unique beauty and making them useful. In that sense, everything we do for preservation is an investment in the future. And it's part of what keeps our property values in this town high. It's part of what makes this a desirable place to live. It's key to maintaining the unique Oak Ridge identity. So if there are no further comments, I'll invite a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you for being here.